that you do with businesses. Obviously, you're a strong advocate for speaking to the customer. And this is one thing, and obviously with our She Generate program attendees who were with us earlier today, we talked very heavily in terms of that customer engagement and customer insight, but it's a difficult one sometimes to approach. So I'm curious to know how you encourage people to approach their customers, to support them in building their story, and what do they ask them?
Yeah, it's not easy to approach your customer, and also it's really hard work. And the thing is, you don't even know necessarily who your customer is yet if you're a founder. But it's the interface with where you're actually going to get your cash from, your business from, the interest. And it's sort of, so it's I suppose what I am saying is, you've got to be ready to meet lots of the wrong people to meet the right people. And I was just saying in the break, obviously when I set up the Story Coach, it wasn't the only thing I was doing, otherwise I wouldn't have eaten for about 6 years. I was working and still doing little TV jobs and working, and then my husband also set up his own business, so I had to go and get a regular 3-day-a-week job while his business was taking off. You're always fitting in your stuff around everybody else's needs. So just getting out and sort of doing some ground research on your customer seems like the most sort of time-consuming, annoying bit that you might not do. So I used to go to sort of think tanks discussions to listen to people, because I'd never met anybody that ran a business. I only knew people who worked in telly. So I went to lots of think tank discussions to listen to what people's problems were. That was useful. And I would say it's put yourself in a position where you're talking to people you'd never normally meet. If you only talk about your idea to your friends and your family and the people who think it's brilliant, you're probably going to fail. And put yourself in awkward situations. So we've got so many founders in the room, I can't say what the question is, but I would say practice telling your bits of your story, your business story, from their point of view, and see what resonates, and be ready to be pushed back, and that's okay. It's like just testing a product. You are testing what lands well and what doesn't well. So don't take it personally. Build up a bit of a thick skin and go out and ask the questions. And that takes a lot of emotional energy, but it's a very important bit of investment in your business.
Absolutely. And for us, Anne, obviously we talk all the time from AwakenHub, putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, or the networking or think tanks, to expand your network, but also to learn. And that learn and listening is so invaluable in this journey of building up that story, and not only from a business perspective, but a personal perspective. And one of the things that you and I have spoken about is where does the personal journey fit into the storytelling around the business, and kind of what's your opinion on that, and how you shape that?
Well, I think when you propose, particularly if you're looking for funding, when you're proposing an idea, it's not just the idea, it's the person who's going to make that idea happen. And the energy and commitment and drive and qualities of the person who is pitching is as important as the idea. So I know we're not really programmed to talk about how brilliant we are, but I think particularly when you're trying to raise funds, it's data, it's stuff that an investor needs to know to make the decision. And when I was working with Downforce Tech, which was the last founder thing I did in July, that was amazingly, despite the fact that they're chief scientists of massive organizations, they hadn't put their credentials really full enoughly in the pitch. And because, like I said earlier, when you've got loads of detail and you're excited about all the detail, it's very easy not to talk about the bits you think that are obvious. It's not obvious. It's part of the story that's going to inspire someone to support you. So it's not it's what I'm saying, it's not optional. Your story is your business story, and you need to know how your story improves the value, brings value to the proposition of the business.
Fantastic. We talked about that in many times in relation to your value proposition. Don't lose the you in that, and the catalyst of why, and understanding the why is so important. And one of the things that I always find fascinating, because you don't qualify success only in monetary terms. You qualify it in so many ways. Can you give me your view on that?
Yeah, it drives my husband mad. His first question is always, and are you being paid? And I was like, so less so now, but first in the first 6 years, because every time you interact with a customer, you are getting information, you are getting stories from them, you are getting training. And obviously I'm a service provider, so it doesn't cost me anything to work with my customer. But in the early days, it was I met a lady who very kindly sort of said she'd meet up and chat, and she said, don't think if they're not paying you, you're not getting value. In the early stages, you need stories about the difference you've made in people's businesses. And so that is as much a bit of revenue as payment. And obviously that can't go on forever, but I would say it's still a way that I still think of every job in terms of what am I going to learn from this, as well as what cash I'm going to get from it. So I think that's what I'm saying. Think of, you've got relationships, you've got advocates, you've got learning about your own business, you've got stories that you can tell to other people, and then you'll get paid. So that's a whole load of stuff. As a founder, as a business owner, you need to get your next lot of work in.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'm going to ask one more question from, and then I'm going to move over, because I think they're coming thick and fast in on Zoom.
We're not going to have
which is
awkward
great.
silence.
Oh, no, we're definitely not going to have an awkward silence. But I'm interested. Obviously, you've worked with so many founders at different stages of their business, from the launch to raising to fundraising, and obviously most recently in terms of the exit, in terms of helping companies to get ready to do that exit strategy.
Yeah.
And the story can be different at different stages, and obviously it's not set in stone. But from your perspective, on your founding journey, as your business run through those stages, how often do you think you should revisit your story?
Well, I think I've got sort of two answers. It's about revisiting the story and also revisiting who your audiences are, because you'll have a sort of core business story, but the way you tell that will depend on who your audiences are, and it will change. And if you're telling the same story to everyone, that's probably, you haven't probably done enough thinking about which audience is which, what their drivers are, and what they would be interested in. So that's my first thing, is you have to keep saying, because I suppose there was a point in my business where really I was telling my business, I was talking about to advocates, I was trying to get people on my side to go in and sell my services. Well, that's different now from telling my story for like an individual who might want to come and work with me. Then that's much more about trust, safe space, that sort of thing. Whereas an advocate, I'm going to be talking about big wins, saving money, saving time. So think about your audiences, and don't let your story go out of date. It does take time to think about it. You need to create brain space. You need someone to help you. So I'm not going to say do it every 4 months, because that's not going to happen. But you certainly want to have a period in the year where you take a look at it and think, where are we now? And at what point, specifically, I think I've learned, what point have we got so big that we now need to be consciously telling this story internally? Because when there's 2 of you, when there's 3 of you, you all just live the values, you live the story. When there's 11 of you, then usually the last two in aren't quite as clear as what they belong to. And that's where you can lose that story driver energy that you got at the start. So it's about also making sure that story stays at the heart of your team.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. Okay, first up, question from Gemma Simpson. How much of your authentic personality should you display when storytelling to customers or investors?
Yeah, I think authenticity is very important. And I think investors and collaborators are going to be people you're going to be working with long term. And if they don't like your authentic personality, they're probably not the right investor for you. No, it's not just about, do you like them? It's not just about, do they like you? It's about, are you going to be able to work with them? Are they going to buy into your business? And so I think when I say authentic, I don't mean undersell yourself. It's not like, oh, I'm just here today to that, not that sort of authentic, but I think being yourself, and because for me that's generous delivery. If people come away and think, I know what she's about, they are more likely to remember me than if I was a fourth person that they saw come in that day with no sort of visible individual traits.
Okay, super. From Nicole, how do you balance storytelling when you have a co-founder? Do you have a joint company story or share two separate personal ones?
It's a joint company story. Your personal one is not relevant. It's about what you're doing together and what each of you bring to that partnership. But it's very important that it's cohesive. And story about that, I was doing a company values sort of workshop with two founders, co-founders of a publishing company, and one didn't want to be involved, but I'd had an hour's chat with him already where I basically got out of him what I needed. Then he said he didn't want to be involved, and the other one said, that's all right, because we're totally on the same page about everything. I can do it. And I was like, okay, well, I'll do it with you and let's see where we get to. And he wasn't on the same page. There was things I got from the first guy. There was things I got from the second guy. So I pulled it together and gave them what I thought their values were and like a little paragraph of introduction. And they both looked at it and went, yeah, that's right. That's who we are. But that's not what either of them told me.
Funny. And the next question is from the going through that process, Anne, and obviously the outcomes to it. Are there any resources that you would recommend our community looking at to take themselves on the journey or to understand the pillars a little bit further?
Yeah, well, so I've got a YouTube channel which isn't called The Story Coach yet because I haven't got enough subscriptions, but I think they've just changed the rules. So soon I will be able to, but if you go onto my website, you can click through to my YouTube channel there. And on there's 9 films, little short films, which are about each of those 7 story elements that I was talking through earlier. And of course, it's very broad. It's not specifically about founding businesses, but it's a good start to sort of thinking through. Now we've talked about the model of a story and you've got the idea that you've got to break out all these elements before you bring them back together again. I think, over Christmas time, one at a time, those would be a good place to start. And then when I get my new website up, which will be in the new year, then my idea is to have a little bit on this 3-step process of how you plan, how you use all those instinctive storytelling skills in a more structured way.
Super. Frances, welcome, Frances. Congratulations on the Late Late Show. So many pitch events are a prescribed format, so they tell you what they want you to include, but you have to stand out. Have you seen any companies successfully ditch this prescribed format and replace it with something better and then get investment?
Well, so I can thinking about PropellerNet, who are they're an agency for getting you up the Google ranks, whatever. They're very good at it.
Yep.
Yeah, they're very good at it. And they were pretty good at getting business. and I did a day's workshop with them to reshape their pitch. And they changed the shape of it because we talked about the end, and we said, have we signaled at the end what we want them to think, feel, and do? So that's one of the steps. So and of course one of the do's was to sign up. So they basically created something that ended with a conversation that invited the sign up. It wasn't just like, so hope you all liked it. This was something, obviously I wasn't in the pitch, but that's what they decided to do. They ended the pitch with so if you want to go ahead, we've got a piece of paper here, first dadas, and this is the first steps in the journey together. So they basically imagined the future, and they got like a 100% hit rate up until then when I spoke to them, which I think they got to 6. So that's my factual proof that if you can change the shape even within the categories that you're given to what you say in those categories.
Okay.
Is that a good answer?
Okay.
Is that good enough?
Yeah. Yeah. Francis, does that help in terms of, yeah. So sorry if we've got Fiona here. I missed a bit of your presentation. Does the story process have a call to action piece? So when you work with companies, Anne, at the end, do they need to have a call to action, or is that the call to action important?
Yes. So the shape of the story is at the beginning, you're luring your audience in on this journey. You're taking them to a point that you've planned. You know how you want them to think, feel, and do at that end point. And of course, that do is an action. So and it's very easy to do this. Spend a lot of energy telling everybody about all the benefits and getting everybody excited. And then you get to the end and there isn't a clear set of actions that you want your audience to then do. And that's, it depends how structured the process is, but it's, if you're doing a presentation, it's very easy if you haven't thought about that end point to go, well, that was me. Hope, you all really enjoyed it. You've got to have a real plan for the end, which is more, thanks for your time. This could be an amazing opportunity for us both. Let's look at next steps. That might be a bit arrogant. You've got to choose your audience, but do you know what I mean? You've got to choose that end line. It's as important as your first line. Yeah.
Super, fantastic. And I'm going to ask you one last question, and then we're going to I'll hand over to Sinead to do the quiz. If you were to give a startup founder one piece of advice, and as we close down 2022 and going to kicking off a new year, 2023, what would it be? What would you say go into 2023 with?
I think you do have to take a bit of time on your own story and your own value. And the easiest way to start with that is to ask 2 or 3 colleagues that know you now and previously what it feels like to work with you, and get them to send you an email with that. Not what you're good at, what it feels like, because that's going to help you see the character that you are bringing to the table. And that's something very hard for you to do without it. So it's that is part of your professional story, the character that you bring to your team, the energy that you'll bring to your team. So that is the hardest thing for a founder to spot for themselves. And that's how you found out what it is.
Super. And thank you so much. I know that everyone will take a lot from our conversation this evening, so we really appreciate your time, and I have dropped Anne's website into the chat there, folks, storycoach.london, and obviously we will obviously there will be a spike in views and visits to the website, Anne, over Christmas. It'll be your Irish friends and contingent from the AwakenHub community. Thank you so much, Anne, really appreciate it, and I'll pass you over to Sinead now.
Thanks very much. Lovely to meet you all. Thank you for listening.